It is a privilege for me to serve in Congress, especially now, because after the 2006 election and the Democrats became the majority in the House, we were able to literally make some major kinds of priority changes that really supported workers, small businesses, people who were really struggling and their needs were not being attended to for 12 years under the Republicans, and particularly the last 8 with George Bush as president. So we did a number of things really early on in the committees that I sit on with regard to labor issues, with regard to, as we said, infrastructure. And in fact, the huge recovery bill that we passed, the $800 billion, which sent billions of dollars to every state, including Hawaii, is very challenged economically right now. Pretty much, I think every state is in a deficit situation. That bill sent over $1 billion to Hawaii, and a big chunk of that was for infrastructure. That's jobs on the ground, that's job retention, job creation. And I sit on the TNI committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Jim Oberstar, who chairs that committee, was a major champion in getting as much money from the recovery bill to go into infrastructure spending. And unfortunately, there wasn't as much in there as we would like, but as all of us are looking at the projects that ARRA money is going to, I talk with people who have jobs in construction because of that money. And so these are the kinds of things that I get to work on. It's a privilege to serve my community. Education and labor, particularly education. When I was lieutenant governor, I did some work on focusing on the importance of quality early education as being foundational. And as an immigrant, coming here and not speaking the language, being from very, very humble beginnings, it is the educational opportunities that this country afforded me that enables me to give back in this way. So when I talk about education being foundational, it truly is because of my own experience and talking with teachers and educators all across the state and now all across the country. So my pre-K bill was one of only a few freshman bills marked up in the Education and Labor Committee last year. That committee had over 800 bills that referred to that committee. I think we marked up only 25 in the 110th Congress, and mine was one of the 25. It did not come to the floor because of various factors, but basically the provisions of the pre-K bill, as JD mentioned, is in a huge Barack Obama initiative on education that supports early education. It's $1 billion in grants to states over 8 years. And also a lot of focus on community colleges as being the entity that is most able and responsive to work with the business community in terms of workforce development needs. And so that's some $6 billion that goes for those kinds of grants to our community colleges. And I know there are people here who are very involved in supporting community colleges. And also student loans. The college is very unaffordable now, and so we did some major things to make loans much more available and accessible to students to go to college, and paying attention to the degree granting institutions that support APIA students, and Asia Pacific Islander students. So the minority serving institutions were also paid special attention in these bills. And it makes a big difference when people like me, when people of color are members of Congress. There are these kinds of focus that we bring to the table. It's our experience, our advocacy. And it's very important that Mike Honda and Doris Matsui and now Judy Chu, myself, David Wu, that we are there serving on the committees because, as I said, we have some unique perspectives that need to be brought to the table. And I'm glad that as I talk with people, APIA leaders all across the country, that so many APIAs are getting into the leadership pipeline at the local level and state level and going on to the national level. There's a lot of work to do. I did have a chance to talk with some of you as we were gathering, And a number of you have some projects that you're doing in Hawaii, for which I am very grateful. And I'm going to want to keep in touch with you. And of course, if there are things that I can do to support your partnering with companies and individuals and educational institutions in Hawaii, I share that commitment and investment with you. So I want to work with you to make sure that your projects succeed. So, not that I want to suck up that much, but hey, I'm sure your projects are really, really great. I would like to be open for questions or any comments. We're dealing with a huge, huge healthcare bill in Congress, and I sit on one of the three major committees that worked on the base bill on healthcare in the House. It's Ways and Means Committee. Charlie Rango is the Energy and Commerce Committee. That late Friday, that committee, chaired by Henry Waxman, I'm sure you all know him, reported out a bill. And the Education and Labor Committee, again, chaired by Californian George Miller. Those are the three big committees that dealt with our jurisdictional parts of the huge healthcare bill. And what's going to happen now is during this August period, our House leadership and the three chairs will get together and come up with a bill that will be brought to the floor. There are some major concerns that I have about the elements in this bill, especially as it emerged from the Energy and Commerce Committee. I am a big supporter of the public option as a way to keep healthcare costs from continuing to consume so much of our economy. It now represents 1/6 of our economy, 18% of our GDP, and growing. We cannot sustain this kind of expenditure at the same time as our outcomes are not very good compared to other developed countries. So for the money we spend the most of any development country on healthcare, and with outcomes that are basically pretty mediocre for the money we spend, and 47 million totally uninsured and growing. So we cannot sustain this kind of a system. It's consuming a lot of our energy in Congress. And we already passed a huge energy bill. We passed huge, the recovery package. We passed a huge TARP, the Troubled Assets Relief Program, which I think the jury is still out as to how that's all going to play out. And then just recently, just before we left, which goes to show you how quickly Congress can act when we're faced with a program that's very successful that we need to continue, is the Cash for Clunkers program. And I tell you, one of my friends, that was her bill, Betty Sutton. She's a first-time, this is only her second term. We came in together. She represents Ohio, and they're really hard hit with this economy, and she had heard, I think it was Germany that had this kind of program, and she really pushed for this, and everybody thought, what is that, Cash for Clunkers? How is this really going to work? The House wanted to put $4 billion into that program. The Senate came back with $1 billion. It was supposed to last through August, or at least part of August. In 4 days, that $1 billion was accounted for. And so on Friday, before we left, out pops this bill from David Obey, Appropriations, and the House passed a bill that would put in another $2 billion for this program. And I understand that the Senate is going to be voting on it today. But it is amazing how fast we can move when we are, encouraged by success. And this is the kind of idea that I really like, because, as I said, the $700 billion TARP bill, these were extraordinary bills that we passed in a really short period of time. The jury is still out on that, but something like Cash for Clunkers, it helps our dealers, it helps our auto manufacturers, and it helps individuals. And I think I'm really glad that we came up with a program that actually helps, real people, even in Hawaii.
Has it been a